Hi everyone, welcome to Mr. Wagget's math class. Today we're going to talk about buying two different things at the same time. Let's talk about buying two different kinds of cheese from a store. And each kind of cheese costs you different amount. So the rate of change for this cheese is different than the rate of change of this cheese. And I have a total of only probably $20 to pay. So how would you write that in an equation for you to graph it? I have $230 I wanted to spend on buying birds. And I love this kind of bird, the blue parakeet, for $23.99. And I love this kind of bird, which is diamond dove, for $39.99. But I only have $230 to spend. So how many birds can I buy of the diamond dove kind or the blue parakeet for $230? So today's lesson, we're going to write equations in standard form to figure out how many can I buy of both kinds of bird. Now that you saw two examples of buying two kinds of cheese and two kinds of bird, how do we write the equation to represent that situation and how to graph it? To do that, let's build on what we learned before. And what we learned before about linear equations, that we have two kinds of linear equations that we already learned, two forms. The first one is the slope-intercept form, which is y equal mx plus b, where m is the slope or the rate of change, and b is the y-intercept or the initial value. The second equation we learned about linear equations are proportional equations. Y equal mx, where m is the slope. Notice there is no y-intercept because it crosses the y-axis at 0, 0, 0, 0, or the initial value is 0. Those are linear equations because they have a constant rate of change. That slope is a constant rate of change, and that's how I know it's going to be a linear equation. And from graph, I know it's a linear equation because when graphed, both equations, they created a line. Now let's discuss the third form of linear equation written in standard form. It's ax plus by equals c, where a is the rate of change for x, b is the rate of change for y, and c is the total. So notice in standard form, you always have a total. As long as a and b cannot both be 0. Why is that? Watch what happens if we replace a and b with 0. You end up with 0x plus 0y equals c. Any number multiplied by 0 is 0. So 0 times x is 0, 0 times y is 0, equals c. This statement is true only if c equals 0. What if the total 23? Can 0 equal 23? No. So we can't have both a and b, or the both rate of change, as 0. Now let's talk about a line that crosses the y-axis and the x-axis. It crosses the y-axis at 0b. Let's discuss this coordinate pair. Always, the first number is the value of x, and the second number is the value of y in a coordinate pair. So the line crossed the y-axis at b, so the y-intercept is b. So for the line to cross the y-axis, x always has to be 0. Now let's talk about a0, the coordinate a0, which is the x-intercept at a, which means, again, the first number in a coordinate pair is the x value, and the second number in a coordinate pair is the y value, which means for the line to cross the x-axis, y always has to be 0. And the x-intercept is the value of x. And that's critical to know the next step. I will show you 3 easy steps to graph equations in standard form. ax plus by equals c, so that's the standard form. How do we graph it? Step number 1 is to find the x-intercept. And remember we said y has to be 0 for it to cross the x-intercept. So replace y with 0, then solve for x. Or just cover y and solve for x. Then find that number on the x-axis and plot it. Step number 2 is to find the y-intercept. And remember, for the line to cross the y-intercept, x has to be 0. So substitute x with 0 and solve for y. or just cover the x and then solve for the y. Then find that number on the y-axis and plot it. Step number 3 is to connect those two dots. Let's practice graphing this equation. 3x plus 4y equals 12. I am leaving the 3 easy steps to graph this equation. Step number 1 is to find the x-intercept by substituting y with 0 to find where that coordinate A0, which is the x-intercept. Write the equation 3x plus 4y equals 12. Substitute y with 0, so 3x plus 4 times 0 equals 12. Any number times 0 is 0. You end up with 3x equals 12. Now I need to isolate x by getting rid of the 3. So divide both sides by 3. You end up with x equal 4. Go on the x-axis, x equal 4. Find number 4 and put a dot there. Step number 2 is to find the y-intercept by substituting x with 0 this time. To find that coordinate 0b. 3x plus 4y equals 12, write the original equation. Now substitute x with 0, so 3 times 0 plus 4y equals 12. Any number times 0 is 0, so the whole term 3 times 0 gone. You have 4y equals 12. I need y by itself or isolate y, so divide by both sides by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1, 1 times y is y, and 12 divided by 4 equals 3. So go on the y-axis, y equals 3. Find 3 on the y-axis, put a dot there. Now step number 3 is to connect those two dots. And you're done. That's a line of this equation. Remember at the beginning of the lesson, we talked about buying two kinds of cheese. Let's see how we write that equation and graph it. You sold a total of $16 worth of cheese. You forgot how many pounds of each type of cheese you sold. Here's the graph, and those are the two kinds of cheese. My clue from the word problem, the total, which is $16. Right away, I know this should be written in standard form. So what does x represent and what does y represent? On the graph, these numbers on the x-axis and those numbers on the y-axis represent something. So let's decide what those are first. Let's say that the number of Swiss cheese is the x. So go on the x-axis and write number of Swiss cheese because those numbers are the pounds of Swiss cheese. Now let's decide what does y represent. Is the number of pounds of cheddar cheese. So go on the y-axis, write pounds of cheddar cheese because those numbers are the number of pounds of that kind of cheese. Now the equation is ax plus by equals c. That's the standard form. Let's talk about each letter and see how we write that equation. A is the rate of change, which is the price per pound. And x is the pounds of Swiss cheese. Plus B is the rate of change, which is the cost per pound for the cheddar cheese, time y, which is the number of pounds of cheddar you bought, equal the total cost. Now let's replace those numbers in the equation. The rate of change for the x, that means the price for the Swiss cheese per pound is 2. So 2 times the number of pounds, which is the x, plus 4 is the rate of change for y, which is the cost for buying the cheddar cheese is $4, times the number of pounds you bought, equal the total, which is 16. Now, how do we graph that? Remember, step number 1 is to find the x-intercept, but now I will show you the cover-up method. Instead of replacing y with 0, just cover it, because any number multiplied by 0 is gone. So write the equation 2x plus 4y equals 16. Completely cover the term 4y. You end up with 2x equals 16. Now divide both sides by 2 to isolate x. You end up with x equal 8. Now go on the x-axis, find x equal 8 and put a dot there. Now step number 2 is to find the y-intercept. Again, write the equation, but this time, instead of replacing x with 0, just cover the whole term x, and you end up with 4y equals 16. I need to isolate y, so divide by both sides by 4. You end up with y equals 4.
Now go on the y-axis, find 4, and put a dot there. Step number 3 is to connect those two dots. Now that we graphed the equation, let's interpret the y-intercept and the x-intercept. So look at the graph of the equation 2x plus 4y equals 16. To interpret the y-intercept, look at the graph where the line crosses the y-axis, which is the y-intercept at coordinate 0, 4. So what is that 0, 4? 0 is the value of x, which is the number of pounds of Swiss cheese, and 4 is the value of y, which is the number of pounds of cheddar cheese. Which means I bought 4 pounds of cheddar cheese for $16 and 0 pound of Swiss cheese. If you want to make sure your answer is right, write the equation, substitute x with 0, y with 4. 2 times 0 is 0, you end up with 4 times 4, 16. Yes, $4 per pound, and you bought 4 pounds, so you spend all $16 on cheddar cheese. Now interpret the x-intercept. To interpret the x-intercept, go on the graph, find where the line crosses the x-axis, and it did on 8, 0, the coordinate 8, 0. What does that mean? 8 is the value of x, which is the number of pounds of Swiss cheese, and 0 is the value of y, which is the number of pounds of cheddar cheese. Which means I bought 8 pounds of Swiss cheese for $16 and 0 pound of cheddar cheese. If it cost you $2 per pound for Swiss cheese and you bought 8 pounds, that's 2 times 8 is 16. So you bought 0 pounds of cheddar. And that worked. Now, what happens if I find any dot on the line? That means a combination of both Swiss and cheddar cheese. Combination of the two, let's talk about this green dot, or coordinates of 2, 3. That means you bought 2 pounds of Swiss cheese and 3 pounds of cheddar cheese as a combination for $16. Substitute those numbers in the equation. Did you spend $16 by buying those amount of pounds of cheese? 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 3 is 12, and 4 plus 12 is 16. So you spend $16 on 2 pounds of Swiss cheese and 3 pounds of cheddar cheese. Now let's review the 3 easy steps of graphing equations in standard form. Ax plus by equals c. Step number 1 is to find the x-intercept by substituting y with 0, or just cover y completely because anything times 0 is 0. Solve for x, find that number on the x-axis and put it down. Step number 2 is to find the y-intercept. And to find the y-intercept, substitute x with 0, just cover the whole term, and then solve for y, find that number on the y-axis and put it down. Step number 3 is to connect those two dots, and you're done graphing. Remember, if there is a total, the linear equation will be in standard form. That's the clue on which equation to use when you have a total. That's it for today's lesson. You guys have a great day.